Following the preseason opener against the Browns, the Packers receive some difficult news. It happens to come on the injury front. I'm going to break that down for you guys in this video. If you are new to the channel and want to show your support by hitting that subscribe button, please take a second to do so. So what is the difficult news the Packers receive? It happens to come from the backfield. Obviously, you all know Marshon Lloyd. If you watch the game, he exited the game with a hamstring injury. It appears they will be without him for the remainder of the preseason, which is difficult news to swallow, especially if you were Matt LaFleur. Matt LaFleur, I'm sure, would love to incorporate the third-round pick, 88th pick overall, into the offense, but it appears he's going to have to wait to do so. Marshon Lloyd, obviously, they saw the potential in what this dude was able to showcase at USC. Would make a great change of pace back for Josh Jacobs, but again, it appears the Packers are going to have to pump the brakes and wait to see what this dude can do. He exited the game 1 carry, 8 yards, so averaging 8 yards a carry in preseason. Not too bad, but again, difficult news for the Packers because he had the hip injury in training camp, which obviously restricted what they could do with him. And then they get him back, and now they're going to be without him again. So when you take a look at his injury history throughout his collegiate career, obviously in the pros, he missed significant amount of training camp time due to a hip injury. And then now he's going to miss significant amount of time due to a hamstring injury. But the good news for the Packers is that he hasn't suffered hamstring injuries that we are aware of throughout his collegiate career. He obviously did have that torn ACL back in 2020, and then he missed 3 games due to a deep thigh bruise, which is completely common for running backs in the league. And now, again, he is going to be missing some significant amount of time due to a hamstring injury. So, again, the good news for the Packers is that it is not a serious injury, but it is serious enough for him to be out probably for the remainder of the preseason, which means next man up. And who is the next man up? It is probably going to be, of course, well, let's take a look actually at the depth chart for the Packers, and then we can get a good idea and good feel. As of right now, obviously, Josh Jacobs is the starter. Josh Jacobs had a very good showing. 1 carry, 7 yards, obviously averaging 7 yards per carry so far. Of course, this really doesn't mean a whole lot, but we know what Josh Jacobs can do out there. Next man up on the depth chart is A.J. Dillon. A.J. Dillon, very disappointing showing. And when we start talking about A.J. Dillon and what this dude, high expectations for A.J. Dillon coming into the league. Obviously hasn't quite met the expectations that we all had for him as a backup to Aaron Jones. And when he had to step in last season, he looked incredibly bad at first, but then he picked up momentum, and A.J. Dillon obviously putting in a lot of offseason work and high hopes for this dude. Good character, high character guy, but you got to be able to produce out on the football field again. So when you start taking a look at the depth chart, he is number 2 on the depth chart currently. I do not see that maintaining. I was hoping Marshon Lloyd was going to be that number 2. And he should probably end up being that number 2 back for the Packers. But again, we haven't been able to see what this dude could do, what he's able to showcase out on the football field. And if he keeps suffering injuries, it's going to be super disappointing career for him. But completely common to get a hamstring injury. Again, the good news is that this dude doesn't have a history of hamstring issues like some other Packer players out there. But when you take a look at Emanuel Wilson is one of those dudes that stepped up in a major way last preseason, and so much so, let's take a look at what this article had to say last season. Packers running back Emanuel Wilson, preseason top rusher, rookie with extensive HBCU background, is currently leading the NFL players in rushing after a pair of preseason contests. Wilson rushed for a league high 174 yards in 2 games as the Green Bay Packers have played the Cincinnati Bengals and Patriots. That's 30 yards more than the closest competitor, Julius Chestnut, out of the Tennessee Titans. He averaged 8.3 yards per rush and has a pair of touchdowns. Of course, It goes on to say that both of Wilson's touchdowns came in his debut against the Bengals when he exploded for 111 yards on just 6 carries in his debut. If you remember that from last season, this dude obviously has that breakout speed. He showed it last preseason. We're seeing it this preseason. Saturday, 13 carries, 67 yards, and a touchdown. This dude is a preseason gamer. He is answering that next man up type of call. So he currently, in my opinion, should be that number 2 guy on the depth chart ahead of AJ Dillon. And until AJ Dillon can prove something, and hopefully we see something this next preseason game, you can't help but to push AJ Dillon down the depth chart. Emanuel Wilson just looks fresher. He looks better. He's hitting those holes. AJ Dillon just seems to hit those holes with reluctancy. And obviously, when you've got a power back, a quote unquote power back like AJ Dillon, you hope that he can power his way through just to get an extra yard or two. If you didn't remember his series where they handed the ball off to him 3 consecutive times in a row, he just was not able to get a yard. Obviously, it doesn't help that the O-line wasn't able to really get a push, but AJ Dillon should be able to have the explosiveness and the power as a power back to get at least a yard in 3 attempts. And unfortunately, he wasn't able to do so. Again, 4 attempts, 2 yards, averaging 0.5 yards a carry. Ellis Merriweather, 2 carries, 7 yards, averaging 3.5. Jarvion Howard, 8 carries, 44 yards, averaging 5.5. Rookie out of Elkhorn State for the Packers. And then you had again, AJ Dillon's performance looking lackluster at best. It would have been a different story if these other running backs out there had equal performances. It just would have been a lackluster on the offensive line altogether. However, these backs all put up much better yards than AJ Dillon. Again, very disappointing because the expectations I feel are going to be a little bit high for AJ Dillon when you start talking about just him on this Packer offense. So this dude is not able to contribute. Leave your comments. Let me know. Are you guys equally as frustrated with me with AJ Dillon's performance? Obviously, he's going to have to prove otherwise in the next 2 preseason games to probably even make the roster. Thankfully, the Packers signed him for next to nothing. But in my opinion, Emanuel, even just the 1 carry for 8 yards from Marshon Lloyd is going to be more, just more optimistic for me than AJ Dillon's lack of production out there for the Packers. Leave your comments. Let me know what you guys think. And as always, go Pack, go.